Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here to talk about exciting story of this NewCo model in Taiwan. And I'll use my company, AltruBio, as an example to share with you this story. I gave myself this new title because I heard about, even though NewCo, it's a big deal in Asia, but it hasn't been discussed in BioAsia Taiwan. So hopefully to share with you and love to hear your feedback about that. First of all, since I'm going to use AltruBio, my company, as a way to introduce this concept as one of the case study or example, so let me give you a little bit about AltruBio. AltruBio is a company with a fundamental technology based on this novel, first-in-class mechanism of action, which was discovered by our research team here in Taiwan back to quite a while ago. And currently, in the whole world, we are leading this technology. It turns out the target PS01 is the key regulator of regulating the late stage chronically activated T cell, which is one of those most important cell population we need to regulate for immunological diseases. And with this knowledge, the team has developed a lead molecule called LTB-168. For anyone speaking Mandarin, this number will put a smile on your face. And basically, it has gone through more than 200 patients and creating this proof of concept, make sure this novel mechanism truly works. So when I joined the company, or maybe when I took on this, or got evaluate this asset 5 years ago in 2020, we see this is really promising. However, 168 is a weekly IV injection, so that's not going to be very applicable for the chronic diseases. So we actually set up this ambition. Can we expand this whole novel mechanism, develop something even more new than that, and make it even more potent? Happy to tell you today, we are on this LTB-268. So basically, one is good, two is must be better. And we have developed better potency, and happy to say also on this journey since 2020 to now, we just celebrate our 5-year-old or 5-year anniversary, and we have progressed this molecule from nothing to something, went through the IND, and currently we're in phase 2 in ulcerative colitis, IBD, a big indication. And we reached a lot of milestones, and last year, fortunately for us, we completed a Series B raise and raised up to $225 million to enable us to complete the phase 2B study, and this team definitely played a huge role. The story I want to share about this NewCo model, some of you may be familiar with that, but let's go back to talk about the innovation. The typical innovation, in order to progress that in Taiwan, between Taiwan and US, it's much more common about you start from before transaction, a novel innovation from Taiwan, and going to find a pharma in US or big pharmas, big biotech, and out licensing. So this is very typical and very successful. So anything I say, I'm not criticizing. Any existing model is not good. But definitely there's some downside about when you out-license that so early, there's a low premium, as well as then the milestone is hard to say. I myself spent most of my career in big pharma. I used to run the entire Bayer biotech business. And pharma definitely have this whole priority set up once a while will change. So this licensing in molecule, even if it's promising, it may get killed. So it may or may not get where you want, or may not, from investment point of view, really achieve this milestone you want to get. The other model also somewhat happening in Taiwan is then this company become a Taiwan listing company, raise money from majority Taiwan investor, and ultimately when you launch a product, then you start partnering with US pharma because you still need that to do the marketing and sell. And the other model, which probably less happened, but still is really quite viable, is then become a US listing company. And now you got the independency to either raise money from US or from Taiwan, and then you can remain independent to launch your drug. All those models are good, but it's also difficult. Because the barrier is not just the pharma, also you need to go to IPO, and that goes through a lot of challenging there. And today I'm going to share with you something recently become a trending. It's so-called this NewCo model, particularly for US, and also the innovation outside of US. And how it works is that before the transaction, this outside US innovation happen. And then when it going to the transaction, you contribute all your IP, and then a US investor will come in and contribute, starting thinking about how to invest that. At the same time, US investor usually then gather about getting the US talents, meaning some people have the successful track record to put in this, and then form this so-called NewCo. Why is this better? Why is it so attractive? Because then you kind of skip this whole barrier with the pharma priority, and you skip the barrier in the IPO potential. It may actually encounter a lot of very tedious and spending. And so this model has been so popular. If you look at this core about the innovation outside US and the US talent plus capital, it's so popular. If you're kind of looking back about all of us here working in the biotech business, the most important thing are three things. This is kind of like this three-leg stool: science, capital, and the talent. So in this case, about NewCo, the science come from outside US. And the capital usually come from US VC or a joint venture. And then the talent, most of the time, contribute by US biotech in order to be able to one day get down to the NASDAQ to raise money. This is actually a fabulous model. If you're not aware, so allow me to share with you, simply this year, 2025, in the past 6 months, between US and China, already have 18 billion US dollar invest on NewCo model, and 14 NewCo company has been formed, meaning every month have 2 to 3 NewCo company has been formed also. And something happening this is then all of a sudden, this whole innovation from China get a channel to progress and really accelerate it, which is really good for the whole world, because now we are not only counting on innovation in certain region, but actually expanding that and also help the growth of the biotech business in China as well. So it all sounds very, very good. And what's the problem? Some of the consideration, personally, I would project this will actually become a concern for the Chinese community in this case. Because you look at this, upfront, for a US investor, why doing this with China rather than the US biotech company in US? Because it's cheaper, which I mean is good also, but still, may not be necessarily fair, because the same value and then the potential valuation can create it out of this outside innovation may not get the deserved valuation. So if you are in a capital market, in this case in China, be able to afford that, you wouldn't really want to make such a deal. The other thing is really even bigger, because most of the time, this is a spin-off out of the China pharmaceutical company, and then would retain the IP right in China, and then give the rest of the outside of China to this NewCo, which I mean really is giving away quite a bit. So this may or may not work for every single region. Today, I'd like to share with you, this is something very similar can happen in Taiwan. And I'll use AltruBio. We have a little bit unique model, not necessarily exactly perfect as I described to you this China model. And to hopefully trigger you think about it, hopefully for any of the investor here or any of the management team or the innovator, you can think about if that's something you can kind of leverage that. Basically, the same idea. Innovation in Taiwan, combined with the investment outside of Taiwan, because outside of Taiwan, the capital market is even bigger to be able to offer for biotech as of today. And then leverage the experienced team, being there, done that, be able to bring a product to commercialization and trying to leverage that. And let me zoom in to AltruBio story. So for us, same thing. There's three things: science, capital, talent. For AltruBio story, it's the original discovery. It's originally from this Taiwanese biotech company here. And with that discovery, and in this case, the Taiwanese investor starting to get creative thinking about transform this company to raise a bigger funding. So this whole story before I even present to take on this case to consider when I was still running the whole entire biotech business at Bayer, and the Taiwanese investors start seeking for, in this case, not the investment, but the talents in US. So then reach out to people like me and then to say, hey, you guys been there, done that. How about we collaborate this? Getting the Taiwanese innovation, and we'll put in some money, and you guys help us. Then we'll be able to attract the US investment and then ultimately transform the discovery team into a translational research center, fully leverage this much more effective machinery to accelerate innovation. So this is how AltruBio story all about. A little bit different from the NewCo. Today we talk about particularly in US and China, but much more in some sense, hopefully applicable to you. Let's zoom in. How does this happen? So basically in 2020, including myself, when this small group of Taiwanese investor, no matter industrial, no matter institutional or the individual, they start thinking out the group which can take on this. Including myself, 6 of us got approached. Basically, we assembled a team from legal, R&D, product development, financial, clinical development, all the way to manufacturing. And if you have a quick eyes looking at our background, you probably see we are Genentech mafia. So basically, we know each other back to the Genentech time. So we get to really enjoy the time when we can accelerate innovation, when antibody is still a thing, it's not a commodity, and we can use antibody, create some breakthrough. So we got a track about this. Interestingly, by then, we all left Genentech about 10 years. So interesting for us also is the fun, not just to bring back those nice memory to accelerate innovation, but also to contribute what we have learned 10 years post Genentech. So we got a track by this model. And AltruBio is starting that in June 2020 because of this. And later on in our Series A, we have the fortune, have the A-Moon joined us, and then we have one more director. With the Series A race in 2021, we're starting to be able to build a team. And again, looking at the talent in US who has been there, done that, and creating particularly focus on the clinical talent and as well as the biomanufacturing, and then looking into further strengthen our research team. And then if you look at the capital side, what will happen for AltruBio is then in this kind of new structure, enable us to be able to raise a Series A. We oversubscribed to 63 million, with A-Moon taking the lead, and BVF and Blackstone joined us. Series B, fortunately for us, like I say last year, and still this is probably sad for the capital market more than we should celebrate so much. But by now, AltruBio still on the record in the past 5 years. We raised the biggest round up to 225 million in order to fund our study all the way till the end of the phase 2B. And we have really great support about, I would say, the top 10 investors in US, BVF, R Capital, Cormorant, and Soleus. Then this timeline becomes feasible. For any of the investor here in the audience, you say, oh, darn it, this is such a great deal and I miss it. Don't worry, you still have opportunity because we will be at the end of the phase 2A, we anticipate we'll do a race to get to additional indication. I&I space is one size can actually fit multiple different indications. So we have the ambition, and in a sense, it's our mission. We cannot just sit on one assay and then not trying to further expand. I'll try to accelerate the rest of the slide to go a little bit faster, because then ultimately most important is still the science. And what is exactly science is also attractive, attract people like me, attract the capital. The original discovery back to really long time ago, to be frank, was not really the foundation truly as of today at AltruBio. We only sort of figured it out in the past 3 to 4 years. But turns out our molecule 16A and 26A has ability to restore the immune system back to this so-called homeostasis, the balance. And then even we also identify PSG1 turns out to be an immune checkpoint regulator. Many of you know immune checkpoint regulator in an inhibitory way to treat the IO space, but we are turning that the other way around, trying to downregulate the immune system which is overactivated. So basically, how it works really is that we suppress the overactivated T cell and trying to bring back the whole immune balance. Back to the very beginning about 168, we already have 4 different indications and totally already in the phase 2. With that great foundation, our heart, and that's our name, where it's representing for altruism, thinking about what patients truly need. It's not just we need to change from the weekly IV, we need to kind of expanding into what is a medical need. In this case, it's ulcerative colitis. And we decide to focus on that. Another thing is also our prior data from our first generation. If you compare the data in the phase 2A from our first generation, the one have the trademark, the market drug. The one doesn't have trademark that in development. You'll probably immediately see the impressive data on these 2 regulatory approval criteria, both the clinical remission as well as the endoscope improvement. We totally stand out. So this novel mechanism truly can make a difference, present something transformational, but not just incremental. That's why we went through the whole long journey, and in the past, I'll say like 4 years, and designed the 2nd generation molecule. In the interest of time, I won't be able to get into the detail, but basically you just have to trust me about now. We have even clinical data to demonstrate the potency is way higher than the first generation. And we went through no cutting corner about the phase 1 to demonstrate safety, as well as now we are in this phase 2A study. Let me say that again. We want to focus on transformational, not just incremental. So we decided to do this study for the patient refractory to the advanced therapy, meaning the most advanced therapy not be able to help those patients. If you're familiar with this disease, patients are suffering need to have the stool frequency 15 to 22 times. It's only 24 hours a day. And this suffering is really not little. And the bleeding in the guts is really not bearable. And we managing to try to make a difference. And with that study, we would cut it a little bit more short for our phase 2B, the placebo control, and try to make it quick. But not just so. We have also the preclinical data and as well as the clinical data to support other indication. So the whole market expansion and potential is huge. I on purpose show this slide. It's not here, we're just trying to make money and make the $1 billion off those market penetration. But typically in Taiwan, for such an innovation, it's very hard to get funding for such a big indication because the clinical trial costs a lot. And that this model enables us to reach out to other capital which will be able to invest in such a big market space and benefit many patients, ultimately really bring the Taiwan innovation to the international stage, make a difference. So this is what we do for our next step, trying to get our phase 2A, phase 2B, as well as then really progress further for the registration. So in summary, as I mentioned about the most important thing about the 3 things to build a biotech company, I hope I managed to convince you we can leverage all those strengths in Taiwan as well as in US to accelerate all those innovation. And then currently for AltruBio, we have the headquarters in Bay Area, basically is, I think fair to say, the biotech hub in the whole world. And then we, 4 months ago, launched our translational research center here in Taipei Bio-Innovation Park to further strengthen the science to make sure this really can make huge difference. So I hope the little AltruBio story give you some inspiration. If we can do, you can do it too. And then as many of those diamonds in the rough one day can shine brightly and benefit many patients. With that, I'd like to thank you for your attention. If you have any question, maybe we don't have time, but definitely find me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zhou, for your wonderful sharing.